So let's talk about this Brian Posehn album called Grandpa Metal. Brian Posehn is not a musician by trade. He is a stand-up comedian and an actor who's had bit parts and guest roles on a couple programs I'm sure you're familiar with, such as Everybody Loves Raymond, Seinfeld, The Simpsons, Big Bang Theory, Bob's Burgers, Community. He was on the Sarah Silverman program. He had an uncredited role in The Wedding Singer alongside Adam Sandler. He was even in one of the Fantastic Four movies. He's kind of a big part of nerd culture. He's really into fantasy and comic books, and he's never shied away from any of that as well. And on top of that, he's also made it pretty clear that he's a big metalhead, and as a result, he has been kind of adopted by the larger metal community. To the point where when he finally decided that he wanted to fuse his love of heavy metal and comedy together, he actually ended up getting a helping hand from the likes of Mark Morton of Lamb of God, Jamie Josta of Hatebreed, and Scott Ian of Anthrax. But that respect aside, I've never really understood the appreciation and support for Brian. I mean, his jokes are super juvenile. It's a lot of fart jokes, a lot of dick jokes, a lot of overly grotesque humor. And generally speaking, it's just kind of pandering to nerd and heavy metal subculture. He never has anything really insightful or unique to say. There's no real clever commentary going on in any of his works. And just objectively speaking, I don't really think that it's very funny. His whole shtick literally boils down to him ranting about being a fat, old, white nerd who loves comic books and heavy metal. Like, congrats, man. I kind of see him as being the long-lost heavy metal-loving fraternal twin of somebody like Amy Schumer, you know? It's just that same shtick of, like, I'm gross, and I suck, and I'm a nerd. And I'm not supposed to like the things that I like, but I do because I'm weird. For these reasons, I was not particularly excited about Grandpa Metal, and to be honest, it wasn't even on my radar. But that changed about a month ago when I received the promo copy of this album and saw how many huge, hyper-talented names were attached to this project. I mean, we've got Chuck Billy and Alex Skolnick of Testament, Steve Souza and Gary Holt of Exodus, Ron Bumblefoot Thal, former member of Guns N' Roses, Phil Demmel, former member of Machine Head. We have Johan Hegg of Amon Amarth. We have the Grammy Award-winning Corey Taylor of Slipknot and Stone Sour. We have the late Jill Janis of Huntress in what is very likely her last recorded appearance ever. And then there's some really weird names like Patrick Stump of Fall Out Boy, Kim Thale of Soundgarden, fucking Weird Al, comedy music legend Weird Al is on this album. I could not believe what I was reading. I was suddenly rampant with curiosity. I was ready to bite the bullet. I was ready to dive head first. I was, dare I say, excited to dance with the devil in the pale moonlight, to dive head first into the world of Grandpa Metal and find out what these literal superstars have assembled in the name of our glorious heavy metal genre. And by fucking God, did it stink. Oh my God, did I cringe. Oh my God, did I bash my head against the end of my desk crying to this record, begging it to stop, begging it for mercy, pleaded with this album to show me even a morsel of humanity, to show me light at the end of such a long, dark, ominous, unforgiving tunnel. And in response, this album laughed at me. He cracked his knuckles and he laughed at me. He spat in my face and he laughed at me. He grinned his teeth and he laughed at me. I sat there praying for salvation. And God did not come to me. Brian Posehn came to me. And he laughed at me. To put it very simply, ladies and gentlemen, I detest this album. I despise this album. I loathe it. Hate is not a strong enough word to describe how God-forsakenly awful it is. From the very beginning to the very end of this album, Brian delivers some of the most tasteless jokes and lyrics of his entire career. All of it dated on arrival. All of it cringe-worthy. And all the while, some incredibly talented musicians, some legendary musicians for that matter, all attempt to spin some of this into something engaging, into something fun, into something that they would, in a normal circumstance, be more than happy to put their name on. It's so depressing to hear all this sheer talent wasted on such horrible, horrible fucking material, particularly when you have these brief moments where you can actually picture the song musically kind of working. Take, for instance, the track 1/4 Viking, 3/4 Pussy, featuring Jon Hegem of Mon Amarth and Alex Skolnick of Testament. These two together are awesome. There's some great riffs here. Jon Hegem sounds awesome. You can actually picture this being on a Mon Amarth record or some kind of weird death metal collaborative unit like on Metal Allegiance or something. But then Brian has to open his mouth with his asthmatic, nasally howls, his horrible half-baked joke about being less of a man because he takes his wife out for a fucking pedicure. Like, I don't even get it. Is the joke that you're somehow less of a man because you did something nice for somebody you love? Like, I don't get it. Did I lose something there, Brian? Have I lost the point somewhere in this muddled mess? Another good example, the title track Grandpa Metal. There's actually a barrage of pretty satisfying groove thrash riffs in the latter half of this song. It's not the most unique or original, but goddamn, it's produced really well, it's performed really well, it's genuinely kind of badass for a moment. But then Brian has to pop his head around the corner and turn this whole song into a weird, awkward Comedy Central roast of Scott Ian, where all of his jokes boil down to, Scott's old. Here's an Anthrax pun describing how old Scott is. Did I mention he's old? And he doesn't like new music, and he's old? And this is devilishly ironic coming from you, Brian, because immediately following this track, Grandpa Metal, in which you roast Scott Ian for being an old boomer fuck who hates new music, what do? You sit down in front of the most generic pop beat imaginable, conceivable. And what do? You rant about being an old boomer fuck who hates new music. And you think you're so clever. You're sticking it to all these pop singers, all these shitty modern rock bands, by playing this little beat, pointing out all of the tropes and stereotypes of pop music, even adding flourishes of disgustingly laced auto-tune into the mix to showcase how fake and dumb modern music is. Fuck Katy Perry. Fuck Beyonce. Fuck Lady Gaga. They're stupid. They don't know what music is. I know what music is. Even saying this over that generic pop beat as the song opens. You know that beat. Warm and familiar. Like your dog's farts. Like, it's bad enough I gotta sit here and listen to you rant like my uncle at Thanksgiving dinner. Did you have to throw in a fart joke? Was that necessary? Was that vital to your message about how horrible and manufactured pop music is? I'm not arguing that pop is a perfect genre, because it isn't. And I'm not arguing that there isn't super generic pop out there, because there absolutely is. But you're not clever for pointing out all of these little things that literally every keyboard warrior and every Metal Allegiance has done since the very beginning of time. You're not clever by throwing in some horrible auto-tune. You're just horrible. You're just creating a horrible piece of music. You're not clever for pointing out how much you hate modern rock music. You just sound like an angry old man. You sound like the thing you, again, literally just roasted Scott Ian for being. Come on, Scott, give new music a chance. What's your excuse? What the fuck is your excuse, you idiot? He even says this later on. I'm not saying that I think they should die. I'm just saying that it makes me want to cry. Pretty sure that's the exact amount of cries, by the way. Honestly, that whole little spiel there is on par with when you hear people go, I don't want to sound racist, but... And then they proceed to say something super fucking racist. And Patrick Stump shows up and he sings a little verse and it's just... Oh god, I cringe. And in case this wasn't wonderful enough for your sophisticated ears, he decided that this song needs a sequel, a part 2, a reprise, one to immediately follow this fucking trash, in which he delivers some real stinging burns. Instead of calling her Cardi B, he calls her Fart EB. Get it? 'Cause it's farting. It's funny. How about this little genius bit? DJ Khaled, what does he even do? We the best, you the worst. Your musical poo. Whoa! Genius! Musical poo! Poop is fun! It's genius! You're a fucking genius! By the way, the whole point of this reprise is to focus on modern, younger artists. We the Best is from 2007. You fucking boomer fuck! Or how about this little genius rap that he throws out in the middle of this reprise? 16 white guys sitting in a room trying to figure out where the track goes boop. Except for the song called Hand of Doom, the king of Latveria is Victor Von Doom. New rap sucks, but that's another song. Blah 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 blah, suck my dong. If Tupac was alive, he'd still have one nard. Tupac, even in death and allegedly with one nard, I guess, is objectively more talented than you, buddy. How dare you bring his name into this? And oh, how I wish that was all of it. Oh, how I wish there wasn't more garbage, literal garbage to dig into. But there's more, and it just gets worse, and it gets stinkier, and it gets filthier, and it gets more insulting. Like Big Fat Rock, for instance, another one of my favorites on this record. Such an intelligent, insightful, unique, and clever song. So funny. You'll be in stitches from how funny it is. Let's play a game. Let's see if you can figure out what it's about from the lyrics. Is it A, his cock, B, his cock, C, his cock, or D, his fucking cock? See if you can figure it out. Here are the lyrics. It's bigger than a mountain filled with molten lava. Like that lady who sued McDonald's, I'll burn your lips with my hot Java. They call him Ballpark Frank, 'cause he plumps when you cook it. It's a giant gummy candy, you're the baby that took it. It's an eclair, but it's covered in hair. Did you guess it? Did you guess it? Did you guess cock? Congratulations, it's cock! Yeah! Now that's just what I need on a metal record, a 50-year-old man singing about his gross, swollen cock. That's just what I goddamn need. He doesn't even have the patience or capacity to attempt to disguise it, to create an actual innuendo, to create, dare I say, an attempt at comedy. Eventually, he just outright says, this is a song, it's about my cock, it's about my dick and my balls. And he even says this later on, like Dwayne Johnson, can you smell what my cock is cooking? It's cum! And the album's littered with all these shitty little skits and interludes as well to add extra doses of pure, outrageous comedy. Ha 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 ha! Like this little bit called Scary Nightmare where he pretends to be his grandma talking to him as a child because he had a really scary nightmare. And the back and forth is just horrible. It's so bad. And it's especially bad because Brian, as his grandma, is just like talking a little bit higher and weathered. It's still obviously him, except he's talking like this because I'm your grandma. Hi, Grandma, how are you? I'm Grandma, I'm great. That's the song. That's the fucking song. And the weird thing is I can kind of see how a skit like that would work if you had like an actual grandma come in and read these lines really seriously. Kind of like that scene in Joker where Joker's mom is like, well, don't you have to be funny to be a comedian? And it's not a joke. It's not technically funny, but in the moment she plays it so seriously that it is funny. It's legitimately funny. All you had to do was bring in a real grandma and have her treat it very seriously. You couldn't do that. You give pop bands shit for using fake hand claps in the track New Music Sucks, but you didn't bring in anyone to be grandma. Come on! Fuck you, you fucking hypocrite! Or this other one, My Phone Call with Weird Al. You have Weird Al on your comedy metal record. You have a comedy genius on your comedy record. And the best you can do of him is this little skit where you're talking to him over the phone about a Trump parody. That's the best you got? Like the whole bit is literally, I want to do a parody of your song Gump and I want to call it Trump. And that's it. And Weird Al has to explain to him that it's not an original song, that he's basically going to parody a parody. And then at the end of the thing, fucking Brian says, you shouldn't name yourself Weird Al, you should call yourself Kind of a Jerk Al. And Weird Al straight up says, that's not funny. And holy shit, whose decision was it to have Weird Al on Brian's comedy record say to Brian's face that he's unfunny? Whose fucking decision was that? That's so stupid. This is supposed to be a comedy record. You shouldn't point out how unfunny the comedian is on the comedy record. And it just gets worse from there. It just gets worse. It just gets worse. The cringe-worthy chorus of Monster Mosh. The stupid one-note bullshit of Goblin Love. These two goblins hooking up on Tinder, banging each other's brains out. Wow, that's funny. Sex is funny. Haha, funny. Let's throw some random thrash metal riffs on top of it to keep the metalheads happy. Because it's fun, and it's funny. We're fun and funny. The late Jill Janis being wasted on an awful cover of Take On Me. Why is there a cover of Take On Me here? Is this your attempt to appeal to, like, meme shit? Like, oh, Jill, you poor bitch. I'm so sorry they did this to you. I'm so sorry. And then the cream of the crop, the real cream of the crop here, Mr. Corey Taylor, singing the What Does the Fox Say? Do you remember that song, What Does the Fox Say? That meme from like 7, 8 years ago? I guess Brian, being the super relevant, culturally aware comedian that he is, decided, yeah, let's do a cover of this song 7 to 8 years later. Perfect. And let's put Corey Taylor on it too, because as we all know, nothing ends a comedy record better than Corey singing a song that completely doesn't fit with anything happening. It's as if he literally sat down and listened to Nostalgia Critics The Wall, and he listened to the bits with Corey Taylor, and he said, I challenge myself now to make something dumber. Remember how annoying that whole ring ding 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 doo bit was from that song? Guess what? It's not less annoying when it has Corey Taylor on it. Alright. So, to be entirely fair, comedy music of any kind, be it comedy metal, comedy rock, comedy pop, comedy country, I don't know, comedy anything, is so difficult to pull off because you're no longer playing to the rules of the genre. You're playing to the rules of comedy, a completely different field with completely different expectations. Comedy, for instance, usually works within a specific time frame. As such, comedy is inherently somewhat dated on arrival. That's inevitable. There is absolutely comedy that ages very well with the times. I think Back to the Future is a fantastic example. In fact, it being as dated as it is helps show the contrast between literally the two timelines that this movie takes place in. Tropic Thunder as well. A lot of the commentary of that film holds true. And in the case of comedy music, there are acts and bits and routines from artists such as Tenacious D, Flight of the Conchords, the aforementioned Weird Al, a comedy legend, I would say, that still are genuinely entertaining. And sure, some of these bits are dated, particularly when you get to some of the really old Weird Al, but it works. And arguably similarly to Back to the Future, when he's parodying some of those songs, it works still in context of the song in that timeline. And I think to some extent, Brian is trying to do that. I think he's trying to use time to his advantage. The time of right now to point out how he and Scott and all these guys are old boomer fucks who don't get modern music. I mean, for God's sakes, the album is even called Grandpa Metal. But every decision made in an attempt to communicate this vision is the wrong decision. Why, in this scenario, would you go out of your way to cover a memey song from like 7 years ago? Why, in this scenario, would you give Scott Ian shit for being such a narrow-minded piece of shit, and then immediately sit down in front of a piano and do the exact same thing you accuse him of doing? And why would you infuse this with potty humor? Why would you infuse this with so much talk about your dick and balls? No one wants to hear about your dick and balls, man. There is nothing inherently funny about male genitalia. And why would you assemble so much talent for all this? Why would you waste it? Why? I may regret this later, but honestly, I think this album is worse than Nostalgia Critics The Wall. Because as horrible as that album is, it at least delegates its issues to a specific album from a specific band at a specific time. This, by comparison, is a literal slap to the face to an entire generation of music. It makes metalheads look like greasy, nerdy, obsessive, neckbeard assholes who can't handle anything popular or modern. It makes us look juvenile, it makes us look stupid, it makes us look sexist, it makes us look bad. And this album is just bad. But I guess some congrats are in order, Brian, because on top of wasting all of this talent, on top of being a gross, stupid asshole, you have single-handedly manufactured the most cringe-worthy piece of boomer-friendly garbage ever. You have also in turn made the worst metal album of 2020 so far, and quite possibly the worst album of the year, period. To the point where if you put a gun to my head and told me that if I wanted to live, I'd have to listen to this album again, I'd tell you to fucking shoot me. I'd tell you to end it all right there. 0 out of 5. Fuck this album, and fuck you.